I spent 2 full days targeting bass in heavy wood cover, laydowns, standing timber, and flooded bushes right after a big cold front shut things down. The fish didn't just move, they got weird. But by adapting how I fished wood, I figured out exactly how to trigger bites when most guys would have packed it in. In this video, I'll show you how to catch bass off trees, how to fish a laydown for bass, and the adjustments that help me crack the code when the conditions changed.
Got a buckaroo. Getting to be that time of the spring where the fish get up in the timber in the backs of the creeks. We had a rain last night. It's warming up. Sun's beating down. Spawn's coming on. And there's no better place to fish this time of year than wood. We're talking about laydowns. We're talking about flooded bushes. We're talking about standing timber. We're talking about willows. But I'll tell you what, learning how to fish timber is essential, especially in springtime. It's one of my favorite patterns. You can old school power fish them. Let's talk about it. So to me, this looks like a good cove for fishing wood. You see in the back, there's a bunch of flooded willows and bushes. So there's a whole bunch in the back there if fish are moving up to spawn. It's a clay pocket. There's no grass in this lake, so they're not going to be out in the middle sitting in grass. There's no docks, no rocky bank or anything like that. Basically, the only cover here is wood, and there's not too much of it. There's some bigger laydowns leading in on these banks. If there's one every 5 feet, then I mean they could be everywhere. If there's only a dozen in this whole pretty good sized pocket till you get to the back, well, I can flip those major ones and it isolates them a little bit more, gives me an idea if they're on those. And then in the back, like I said, if they're starting to spawn, there's enough cover here. You can get quite a few fish holding in the back of it. So you want some wood, not too much of it. And if it's only one piece of wood, it can be good. The thing is, it's only one spot to check. Yeah, there might be a fish in it. It's high percentage. But that's the only game there. You have to run in and run to another pocket. Now, big trees like this right here, I mean, they're huge. It's a lot of cover. The problem is it takes a lot of casts to cover them. And for whatever reason, I don't know, maybe they're so obvious, like everybody fishes them and crappie fishermen and stuff, everybody's up in those. Those don't tend to hold fish as good for me as just like a smaller one that's like 1 or 2 casts to cover it. I don't know, they're more exact. You can, anything in that piece of wood is going to see your cast. Here there's so many nooks and crannies that you can't see under the water, little corners they can be in. There can be a fish there, but it's easy to miss them. So the great big ones look really juicy, really good. But if I just get like a straight pole timber, something that's maybe like 4 to 8 inches in diameter and 10 feet long or something, I can cover that in 1 or 2 casts. And then, I don't know, if there's a fish there, I feel like he's either going to see my bait, he's going to spook away, or eat it. And then I like cover like this on the shore. You see this one coming out right off the bank. It doesn't come out really far. So that's like, that fish, if there's one spawning or living next to it, he's going to be pretty tight to the bank. Now it does on the other side, I can see a limb that goes out farther there. And anytime you see a tiny piece of wood sticking up, like this one right in front of me, a lot of times there's a huge tree underneath it. It's just a branch or something. Anytime, if they're on wood, and I'm on a wood pattern, I don't care how small the piece of wood is in the water, a lot of my biggest fish come off something that's so small you don't think there's much of a tree there. Nobody else cast at it, and sure enough there's a big log underneath there. Nobody fishes that, and that's where the big one lives. See, this gets to be a little too much back here. It's like a flooded forest. It goes way back in. The water's come up some. We had some rains. I like when there's a single row of cover and the outside, maybe inside of the cover of the wood only has maybe 6 inches on it and the deep end has 2 feet. That's pretty much going to put the fish at the base of the tree out to the overhang part. When it gets back behind it like this, they can get way back in there, especially if the water's rising. It's been dropping now, so it kind of pulls them out. But definitely having some wood cover is good. When it starts to spread out, they get into the woods, and you take those fish that live in the back and you spread them all over. They're hard to get back to. You can still catch them, and sometimes like a bladed jig or a spinnerbait gets better just because they're not real specific. The more cast you make, the better your chances. Whereas when it's lower and there's less targets, that's where a jig or a Texas braid gets better, just because they're going to be specifically on those targets. You pick them apart and you know exactly where they're going to be at. and see a snag on that one. Got the jig up there. It's better if you can work the bait. If that tree is laying like this, if you can cast parallel to the tree and bring it back, the branches are usually growing up towards the sun. So if you're bringing it up the tree, going towards the tip, they're going to be pointed this way. So your jig's going to come over them. Versus if you cast sideways, you know, you're coming up and you're going perpendicular, you're more apt to snag. Or going against it, like if I'm going towards the roots, then they're pointing up this way, I'm coming into those crotches every time. Definitely if you can wait till you get to the end of it on a long tree and work it parallel, especially with like a bladed jig, like a chatterbait, a slobber knocker, a spinnerbait, something like that, crankbaits, it's going to be a lot easier to bring it through without hanging. There's a buck bass again. You know, the sun's been beaten down. There's a bunch of water. The water's up, and there's so much cover in the water right now. I kind of picked up the pace a little bit and trying to find an area where there's concentration, because that's typically these upper ends of these lakes. There'll be a lot of dead areas, and you find a pocket or something. The temperature's right, the depth's right, whatever. They're in there. So if you flip with the jig, you know, it's great once you find them, and you can really pick apart stuff. Or if there's not a whole lot of cover, you put it in a high percentage. When it, like I keep saying, when there's a lot of cover, that's where a spinnerbait or bladed jig, I can cover water and I can get a couple bites. If I start to get a couple, then I'll slow down. You know, I like that creature hog, that flat bait as a trailer, and I use it on a jig, and I use it on a swim jig, and I use it on a bladed jig. With the bladed jig, what I'm doing is I'm using a 3/8 one, and I'm using it like a jig. I throw it in there and let it go to the bottom, you know, so it's just like a jig like that, but then I also can swim it back, and then I'll pump it and drop it when I see a piece of wood. It will hang up some. I can't put it way back in there, but when they're sitting out in front of it, I can get a couple drops like a jig, plus I can cover some water, and I can put it through those alleys. Sometimes they're real tight up in the wood, and they're out there, you know, nestled in it, they're spawning. Other times they're up feeding in the shallows, or they're getting ready to move up. Typically, you know, the spawning fish, they won't make their beds in the middle of a bush. They'll have it just to the side of it. Or it won't be in the heart of a laydown typically, it'll be right on the side of it or in an opening. So the male will be out there. If they're actively spawning, both the fish will be in the bed, but so many times the female, for a few days before, she just hangs out in that brush out there, and she's hanging in that area in the thickest part of it. So sometimes pitching into the heart of the cover works better. Other times working the outside of it, especially when they're active and aggressive, not getting a whole lot of pressure, you know, you get the windier days and stuff like this, then just working around the edges. That's where a spinnerbait or bladed jig will pick off. A lot of times, not only active ones and covering water will get you more, but a lot of times it gets the great big ones. It's not the ones on the bed, but it's the female who's up there feeding right before she goes in bed. There it was. There it was. They shoot out of that cover. Man, I'm going towards them cover water here. Glad to get a bite. They're just random bushes. Again, there's so much stuff here. There's a few fish around it. That was a little better one. But hopefully we run into a little group of them. A little better one there. See, there's all this brush up here, and then you look at the shore, there's actually some rock. That's the edge of the creek channel. You see a tiny little isolated limb back there. It came off that. Again, you don't need big trees to hold fish. You just need a little piece of cover, and I like these smaller little isolated ones here versus the great big trees that we were at in some of those places. You see, it's the there's tons of stuff back here. On the left side, I mean, it's just inches to a foot of water over there. Over on this side, we're sitting 9 feet right here. So there's a little bit of depth all the way in the back of the creek, and they're on that steeper bank. They're not back there spawning yet. They're kind of making their way back, and sure enough, they're on that, stuff with a little bit of depth. As the day warms up, the sun's been out. It wasn't cold overnight because we had storms, and it's warming up. You should find more fish and big fish. Seems like in the afternoon, middle afternoon, sun beats down, water gets warmer, good ones should come. But like that one, I missed him the cast before. I thought I felt something. I thought, well, maybe he hit the stick, and then sure enough, next cast, boom. That fish hit a blade jig 3 times, or 2 times, and thumped my jig once. I mean, it's got to be on a bed in there. One that's spawning, probably a male or something like that. Keeps aggressively hitting it. Maybe there's a big female around it. Sometimes you get those little dinks keep biting, and there's a bed, and then all of a sudden the female, you think, oh, I'm just going to catch a 12-incher. And then you catch a 6-pounder. Not that uncommon. Anytime in the spring, even if you do catch a dink, it's always worth a pitch back in there just to make sure there's not another one. Like I said, a lot of times it is a nesting pair, so the next cast will be a great big one. Chunk right there. Felt that one eat right before that. Thought I felt a little light tick pickup. Boy, you have to really be paying attention. Springtime, a lot of these fish are on beds and stuff. They're not super eating it. They're being kind of just territorial, nipping at it and stuff. Well, you feel something, you think you have a bite. You better pitch back in there, make sure. And that's why sensitive rod this time of year, definitely a plus. I flip with that World Class from Fenwick. I think you can tell I got the sweatshirt today and the hat. I messed up, did a total noob move and got the same hat and sweatshirt. But man, the World Class for pitching a jig, feeling those little bites, feeling that tiniest little tick the time before, knowing that wasn't a limb or just a goofy little feel on it, knowing that was a bite, pitching back there got me that fish. It's gonna work pretty fast here. One of the contributing factors to me is how much fishing pressure that the fish have and how long they've been up. Like if they've been beat up, if it's a weekend, it's a tournament, everybody's up here fishing around, then you're gonna have to pick places apart, put it back into spots where other people aren't fishing, make slow, careful presentations, keep it in front of the fish. When it's this, it's just starting to warm up. The fish are just moving shallow. There's nobody up here today. Everybody's out live scoping still, out deep. Nobody's up here. These fish, to me, they're active. If I put it in front of one, they're gonna come out of the bush to get it. So I'm better off in general, unless I really found a hot spot, just covering a lot of water, pick off the active ones, hope that I can cover enough water or I run into something that's really active, or just catch a couple random big ones. So that's why you're seeing me really move through here pretty fast versus sitting and picking apart with a flipping stick. If it was a tournament, if I knew a spot was holding the bunch, it's fish are really pressured after a cold front or something, yeah, I'll slow down and do it. But right now, we're gonna try to pick off some big ones. And the other thing is I'm not that familiar with this water. I've never been up here and fished this area before. Only been to this lake a couple times. So I really don't know if this is a good spot, a bad spot, if there's around the corner is a really good spot, if a half mile down. So if you're at a lake that you haven't been to for a while or you're not familiar with, you're better off moving, covering water until you run into them. Even on your favorite lakes, like keep on moving until you find the fish instead of just grinding and catching a few fish in an area that has a few when you're not sure that other spots don't have a whole bunch. but you can see that's a big lay down tree right there. There's a stick like right next to the boat here where it comes out. Right on the point, hadn't had a bite in a long section, all of a sudden get that huge main lake tree, or huge tree on a main lake point with a breeze blowing on it. Perfect spot for one to be. Oh. I don't know if the camera will show it, but that way, see there's a single lay down here, a big tree coming out, and then a cross one. It makes kind of an X. Man, anytime you get like that X situation, right where that X, that intersection is, they like to get around it. I had to a bladed jig there and just crawled it over that log. And that big one came up and swirled, and I think he got the tail at least because I felt him. I never got the steel in him, but I felt him kind of pull a second, set the hook, and missed him. Tried to swim bait, tried to flip it, see if he'd come back. A lot of times it will. He pitched right back in, but that's one to mark. Come back later, you know there's a big one living in that tree, but that's pretty classic. Not a lot of timber here. It's not like where we're at before where it's all brushy. Just isolated piece of timber, and sure enough that big fish is sitting right there. First cast through it and boom, comes out. I get back in the pretty muddy water. There's a beat up one. I don't want to have him. See, there's a big, look at the shore, there's a big tree coming out, a great big pine tree comes into the water. Blade jig over the top and came out and got it. Went through kind of a dry spell, went through some good looking water in the back of another creek and just didn't hold them. That's how it goes. Sometimes just a total wash. You go back there, don't get a single bite. Doesn't mean it's a bad spot, just not going right then. So, kind of how it is with wood. Once you get a bite like that, once you get an area, it tells me that, okay, they're here. Now we just got to figure out how to catch them. It's the craziest bite ever. Thing came flying to the top and trying to get it, and jumping, and me trying to catch up. I don't know what the hell happened there. That wind is blowing so up ahead. It's hard to fish the bushes. You definitely have to fish into the wind. You go so fast if you're not. Or you can go with the wind and put power pole down. The problem is the crosswind, if it's at your back or in your face, it's fine. But there's like a crosswind going here and it blows your line into the bushes, so it's hard to get your bait out of there without your line tangling up every time, making it tough. That's a nice little chunky female. Man, you can probably tell by the way I'm bundled up today. Huge cold front last night. Wind is blowing literally 30 miles an hour. Water temps dropped again. So, bites sucked. I've had a couple little ones, missed a couple. But it's now about noon. Sun's beating down. Water temps barely slowly climbing up, and you saw that was a good one. That was a female, the right type. And that's the thing about flipping this wood in the spring, especially the sun beats down. You're better off to have a kind of a numbers, a cranking pattern or something in the morning if it's real windy and cold. But in the afternoon, as that sun beats down, when the water's in the 50s like this, and it got into the upper 40s last night in spots here. Like once it warms up, these are the spots that are coming to. And as it starts to warm up and it gets, these spots, it's sunny and fairly calm, and you stick with it, sooner or later you run into a big one. You find a little pocket where it's warmed up a few degrees, and all of a sudden about 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, it's really good, and you can catch a number of good ones real fast. But man, it's a tough way to spend your morning until it gets warm. Little chunk right there, man. It's so cold. And hit a section here where it's just sunny and wind protected. The water's muddier. It's about 3 degrees warmer. You know, even 4 and 5 degrees warmer. Some areas and warming up. See a little bit of shad activity. Sure enough, lose one on riprap over there. Just caught one off a little tree right there. Maybe finally got it warm enough here. We're gonna get some good bites. Last couple ones have been females. They're not big, but I mean they're females, so it's the right type of fish. You start catching, you know, those fat females, some are gonna be the bigger ones.
Any good?
No, it's slow.
Caught any?
A couple small ones, yeah.
Okay. That's bonus points there.
There you go. Showing off.
Huh?
Showing off.
Yeah. Showing off.
Go for a while without a bite, fighting 30-mile-an-hour wind. You go white bass, and then gone. Catfish next. How about that? Actually a bass. Not a big one, but it's a bass. It's been a grind today. I'm not gonna lie. The wind's been blowing 35 miles an hour, like sustained all day last night, yesterday as well. And it was cold last night, and you get a single bite or two in areas that you know should be holding them. The water's warmer and stuff. You can't get more than 2 bites, and they're bucks. It's one of those. It's something to put in the back of your mind. You come back, you know the female's going to be here. In any area, you can still grind out 1 or 2 bites today when it's super tough. I mean, it's probably a premium location. When the bite's good, there'll be a bunch in there. But man, I've had to grind it out. I'm thinking, you know, probably cranking or something out on windier points or something with cold. Dragging a jig on points, something like that, or creek channels would have been better. But we're still able to grind through some fish in the mud and still catch some. We might get a big bite yet, but just not optimum when the wind's howling. It's hard to control your bait around the trees, and the big thing, the fish have just got too cold. It hasn't warmed up enough for them to really bite good. Even with the mud soaking it up, we found some warmer water. It's just it got cold enough last night. It hurt that shallow bite, and they haven't really moved back into any area that I've found yet. And you might be asking why I'm fishing this muddy water when it's so cold and have a cold front. I'm trying to fish wood though, and you have 2 choices when you get a cold front like that. You can either fish deeper and go, you know, the clear water, try to fish deep. As windy as it is, it's hard to get that bait down, you know, very deep. Does seem like a good play to me. If it was sunny and slick, then that would be a good play. But most all the wood here is shallow too, so except for great big laydowns, those trees work. You get out of the wind. But the mud, these fish, I'm in the very back of a major creek, and these fish aren't going to leave. It's a temporary cold front, a couple-day cold front. So I know these fish are still going to be around here. I feel like I can stumble into a couple good bites, and they're not going to leave just because one day it turns cold, swim 2 miles out to the main lake, and then turn around and come back in. These fish are still here in the mud. They're going to be on the trees. There's not much other cover for them to go to. They might not be biting very actively, but I know they're there. Sooner or later, you put it in front of enough of them, you have a chance to catch a big one or two.